We now return to an absolute clusterfuck. I have considered the defense counsel's request for a further summation examination of the jury, and I have determined that the court must uphold the defense's judicial right to this procedure. So, counsel, you will now proceed with your second summation examination. I presume the jury is ready, Mr. Foreman?
We are, my lord.
Very good. In that case, I must ask each of you now to state clearly and concisely for the court the grounds on which you find the defendant guilty of this crime.
The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he? Those 3 books of his.
If there was some novel, alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider.
Even if the woman was throwing books,
It can't be related to this crime if the window was closed, can it? Dearie me, it is only a little book. Hardly life-threatening even with a direct hit.
look, I just want this over with. If I don't bring home some pay tonight, I'll be in a tidy bit of trouble.
Come to think of it, we had a fire at home a while ago. It gave me the sneezes.
Fuck, this one's hard.
Yes, considerably more tangible arguments from all members of the jury this time around, it seems.
What do you mean?
With one notable exception, of course.
My learned student friend was unable to find faults in the previous witness's testimony. So the court must accept the fact that it was indeed the accused seen fleeing from the scene. And moreover, no one else was even at the scene to commit the crime.
Well, if the eyewitnesses are correct, it would seem as if the conclusion is somewhat set in stone. I fail to see how it can be argued any other way.
That means, I'm afraid, that during this summation examination, it's essential that you establish some other tangible explanation for the facts. But how? What would even constitute a tangible explanation here? I mean, the book is pretty tangible. Isn't it obvious? Who stabbed the woman and how? Those 2 details are all you need to provide.
Found lodged in la victim's bec. With the broken tip. Being thrown and how does that come into play? I still suspect the clown guy has something to do with it. Simply give us a name and a method by which the attack was conducted. And there I was thinking this might be hard. Mr. Naruhodo, you have to do it, otherwise this really will be where the trial ends. No pressure, then. That's quite enough preamble. Proceed with the summation examination, please. I presume you are prepared, counsel? It's almost throwing a little bit of Mr. Burns in there. Oh yes, my lord. All right, Ryunosuke, focus your mind now. Clearly, the key to this summation examination is going to be juror number 4, the maid, or should I say, Mrs. Garadeb. We have a book that disappeared from the Garadeb's house on the evening of the incident, and the 4th book found in the victim's hand. There must be a way to link the 2. Yes, that's what we have to find, using every technique I've learned in my short career so far, whatever it takes. Don't forget to keep an eye on Mrs. Garadeb and how she reacts, even to the things other people say. We gotta play that freaking game? Now they're bringing it into the secondary battering. Accused that left behind 3 books. Let's go ahead and press. But as we now know, there were 4 books, not 3. Well, what difference does it make?
There's every possibility that the fourth book, in fact, belongs to the defendant's landlord.
Yes, that's the part I have a problem with.
Sorry?
Well, at the point the woman was stabbed, this landlord fellow was at home, wasn't he? Everything, enjoying a fiery scrap with his wife or something, you said.
That's not exactly how I put it, no.
Well, anyway, the point is the fellow and his wife were somewhere else when it happened.
I think that's what you call a strong alibi.
Thanks, Sasato. So, it couldn't have been the landlord who did it, which only leaves the Nipponese fellow. Honestly, I can't see what all this palaver's about. It's a done deal, isn't it?
I suppose it is, since I have nothing witty left to say.
So he is not to help then.
If there's some novel alternative explanation.
Hold it!
So, you might be willing to change your decision, you mean? Oh my, such delight on your face, but I'm afraid I shan't be swayed by emotion. Despite what you may think of me, I am a very modern, metropolitan, and rational woman. That's great. This is the deadpan look on his face when he said that. If one reads the morning papers, it's all forgotten by tea time, isn't it? So why read them in the first place? You see? Modern, metropolitan, and rational thinking, wouldn't you say? And not at all extreme. As I see it, an overwhelmingly suspicious Japanese man has been implicated by overwhelmingly strong testimony. So despite one or two minor puzzlements, I do declare that the man is overwhelmingly guilty. Modern, metropolitan, and rational logic, wouldn't you say? Overwhelmingly. But us modern gals are always delighted to embrace new fads, you know. So I'd be only too happy to consider an exciting new theory if you could come up with one. I'd be happy to do that too, if only I could. Let's do our very best not to disappoint the modern and metropolitan young lady. Right, I'm glad you omitted rational there. Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to the crime if the window was closed. Well, what about the possibility that the window was open? What about it? I mean, there's just no way it could have been. How can you be so sure? The prosecutor fellow over there said it earlier, didn't he? Winters in London are no joke. You wouldn't want to invite that sort of cold indoors. So no, that window wasn't open. Us Londoners like sitting by the fire and staying warm, you see? Yes, but you couldn't categorically state that the window wasn't open, could you? It just wasn't. They wouldn't have opened it, not even to let the smoke out. From the burning of the books in the carpet. Clearly. Then what's the point in even having windows, huh?
Counsel, you will kindly refrain from childish bickering.
Oh, sorry. Somehow I need to show there's an undeniable possibility the window was open. Because this young man isn't going to budge otherwise. Dearie me, it was only a little book. Hardly life-threatening, even with a direct hit.
Hold it!
But the little book was on fire at the time, was it not? With flames of love, I'll have you know. There's really no such thing as loving incendiary bomb. Well, he brought it upon himself. It's playing with fire to betray a fiery love. Isn't it? Well, don't you agree? Well, any kind of betrayal is certainly a bad thing, yes. But I think the argument might have arisen out of your misunderstanding, Mrs. Garadeb. Never you mind that. The point is, we were just having a jovial little dispute, nothing more. And I won't have any more of these suggestions that it was anything whatsoever to do with this crime. Her voice has gone all over the place, even worse than Van Zeke's. Right, well, we'll see about that, but what about juror number 5? He doesn't seem to be turning a hair at Mrs. Garadeb's relentless onslaughts. It's almost as though he's used to it. What a gentle soul he is.
Look, I just want to get this over with.
Righty right.
Hold it!
You just want to get this over with. How can you sit there and say something like that? A man's future is at stake here.
Well, him and me both in, like I said before.
What?
I told you already, I'm a day labourer, aren't I? If I don't bring home some readies with me tonight, you'll find me floating face down in the Thames tomorrow morning. This is really fucking hard sometimes.
What?
You heard me. My missus isn't one to mess about, you know. She can be fierce, believe you me.
Another shining example of marital bliss, then.
A situation like this cropped up the other day. It was, well, do you know, it's funny, but I can't quite remember.
Sorry?
It was too frightening, that's the thing. Must have blocked it out.
Oh? Really?
I must have blocked it out, really.
Helpful. I wonder if Mr. Beats will ever be dragged into the Thames by his scarf. Don't even go there, Mrs. Sato. There must be some way to jog his memory about this.
Come to think of it, we had a fire at a home a while ago. It gave me the sneezes.
Hold it!
Does that have anything to do with your decision about the defendant's culpability in this case?
Sorry, what's that? You'll have to speak up, lad.
Could you tell us more about that fire?
It was last winter. My grandchildren baked me a lovely cake on my birthday. It had 75 candles on the top. It did. What a sight to behold it was.
You put candles on a cake? Was it some kind of devil worship?
Of course not. It was an angel cake. To celebrate my birthday, obviously.
It seems that's a common custom here in Great Britain, Mr. Naruhodo.
Anyway, I mustered all my puff to blow them out. Only I must have blown wrong somehow. The flames didn't go out. The candles went flying all over the room. The furniture caught and everything went up. The whole place filled with smoke.
Definitely sounds like devil worship to me. And by the sneezes, I presume you mean a cold. But how did you catch a cold from a fire?
What a fiasco it was. The grandchildren, bless them, threw water over me as they tried to put out the flames. And then, because the whole room had filled up with smoke, of course, we had to open all the windows to clear it.
The windows.
The biting winter air rushed over me like the devil dancing on my grave did. I got a terrible cold from it. Would be in hospital for a while. I don't forget that birthday in a hurry.
I knew it was devil worship all along. And something about this old man's story is playing on my mind for some reason. We need to demonstrate who, apart from Mr. Natsume, could have attacked the young woman on the street, as well as how he or she could have done it. Yes, but once again, the jurors' statements are full of personal prejudice. A lot of them seem convinced they're right, even in the face of logical arguments to the contrary. I think you're going to need to pit them against each other to force them to accept an alternative explanation. Yes, I don't necessarily need to find contradictions between their assertions, just a connection might do the trick. Alright, I'll see what I can do. If anything stands out, I'll go in for a strike. That's the spirit. Thanks, Susato, for always explaining again and again. Okay. How this thing works.
Objection!
These two jurors' statements clearly contradict one another.
They do? How exactly, counsel?
Don't point me again. I told you it wasn't me.
What's that you say? Speak up, lad. Speak up.
Juror number 3. Do you see? Oh, me? See what, sir? Did you hear juror number 6's account of his birthday celebrations last year? It seems, despite being a Londoner, he once opened his windows in the middle of winter. Well, yes, of course, because it was an emergency. I mean, obviously, if the room was filled with smoke from a fire, then you'd be mad not to open the... Oh. Exactly. On the day in question, at the time of the incident, there was a fire in the Garadeb household, and Mr. Garadeb had the following to say about it. The whole place filled with smoke.
Oh my! Excuse me!
Juror number 4, do you have something to say about that? Her magic teapot there that always has tea. Mrs. Garadeb.
Oh, dearie me.
Oh, what is the meaning of this? How dare you imply that I'm hiding who I really am? It's imperative that you confirm something for the court. So please, it's time to drop the pretense now.
What is it?
When the fire started in your house that day, did you or your husband open the window?
But I beg your pardon. What are you insinuating?
The room would have been thick with smoke after the carpet and bookcase caught fire as they did. In a situation like that, it's inconceivable that you wouldn't have opened the window.
And what if we did?
Oh, all right then. Yes, you're right. And my husband was frantically trying to open the window, which can't have been easy since I continued to give him a justly deserved book battering. Even though your house was on fire.
Oh, you never stop throwing until the anger subsides. It would be terribly bad for the nerves to do otherwise.
Of course. I should have realized. That's a significant step forward, Mr. Naruhodo. You've managed to establish that the window was open. We simply must have that added to Mrs. Garadeb's formal statement.
Now you mention it, yes, the window was open at the time. I'd clean forgotten, but it's true.
Hold it!
The fourth book found at the scene of the crime shows very obvious signs of fire damage. And the title of the book is The Lion's Pride. The same title, in fact, as the book that Mr. Garadeb told us he had been reading.
Well, I really couldn't say.
On the day in question, did you or did you not throw at your husband the copy of The Lion's Pride that he had been reading?
I did. It was the first thing I could lay my hands on, so I hurled it straight at him. And now you come to mention it, yes. It was rather enjoying reading. He was rather enjoying reading it, you're right.
Why did you not reveal this information to the court from the outset?
Because I couldn't, you insolent little man, I didn't remember. At times like that, you pick up and throw whatever you can lay your hands on, as you well know.
I really don't.
I barely noticed I was throwing a book, much less the title of it.
Excuse me.
What is it, juror number 5?
You know something? I've remembered what it was. That memory I'd blocked out. I was listening to what his granny was saying. Brought it all flooding back.
Who are you calling a granny, you cheeky devil? I'm Mrs. Garadeb, or the maid, I'll have you know.
The man doesn't even flinch. Please tell me that's not because he's so used to being hit all the time.
It was about 2 weeks ago now. I just got back home after work, like. I put my hands in my pocket for the wages I just earned that day, and I nearly died. There was a hole. Every last penny had dropped out.
Oh dear, what a disaster.
You haven't heard the half of it, boy.
Oh?
The wife was cutting up some chicken at the time. Oh, I couldn't hardly get the words out, but I'll tell this straight. I've lost a day's wages, love. Next thing I knew, the blade was whistling past my ear. Struck into the wall next to me, it did, about an inch deep.
No words, just terror.
I could smell it then, you know, that god-awful stench of the Thames. I was sure I was going to end up face down in that muddy banks that night. In the muddy banks that night, I can tell you. Now, it's a real disaster, isn't it?
Disaster, isn't it? I'll never use the word lightly again.
Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this. When women lose their rag, they'll throw anything at you. Knives, hatchets, hammers, you name it.
Mr. Naruhodo, you mustn't think that all women are so short-tempered and unrefined, says the judo, which she hasn't done in a while. What are you doing? Crawling on my forehead, that's not cool. No, I wasn't thinking that. Throwing household objects at people is, well, it's so uncivilized. Throwing people at household objects is better. At least attack with honor, using a bow or the like. What? Attack? Who are you going to attack? Never mind. Anyway, this man's words.
could be rather significant, I think. Alright, we'll come back to the bow and arrow thing later, if I dare.
A woman in a rage will hurl almost anything at you. A kitchen knife really brought that home to me.
Hold it!
Your wife really threw a kitchen knife at you.
That's right. She was chopping meat with it. Had a tiny edge on it, believe me. Still, it's all memories, isn't it? It started with that smile she threw me when we were courting. And since then, the list of things she's thrown at me has grown along with our relationship. There's a cup, and a glass, a pot, a kettle, a chair, a wardrobe, a cooker, a bathtub.
Your wife must be even beefier than you.
And things came to a head last week when she threw me right into the Thames. Still, she's not so bad when she's calmed down. She's a little sweetheart, really.
I'm so happy for you.
If you want to know what I think this whole idea of ladies first that we're so obsessed with in this country was thought up by some clever lads who'd been tossed into the Thames a few too many times by their wives.
That's a very interesting theory. What a terrible thought. On the face of it, this juror's statement just sounds like a really extreme anecdote. But I think it might turn out to be an extremely powerful weapon. A weapon I might be able to use to make the jurors accept an alternative explanation here.
But as fires a dire, you have to open windows to clear the smoke. That's when the chill gets you, you see.
Hold it!
Did you change your statement from before?
Well, yes, it was one of my most memorable birthdays, you see. I couldn't let it go unremembered.
I'm sure the defendant will be delighted that you're using his trial to explore your past. And how is that memory related to this case exactly?
Sorry, what's that? You'll have to speak up, I'm afraid.
Never mind. He's as deaf as a post when he wants to be. But actually, this old man's anecdote might just provide the alternative explanation I need to make my point to some of the other jurors. Okay, well, yes, with another one, yes.
We used unlit candles on my birthday this year. It's safer that way.
So the window was open when the Garadebs were arguing that day. Yes, Mrs. Garadeb has finally admitted to it, which is a very significant victory for the defense. I feel like the fog's starting to clear and an alternative explanation to this case is starting to show itself. The accused left behind evidence of the scene. Okay. If there was a novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider. The throwing of knives, perhaps? Do we do this now?
Objection!
Those two statements clearly have a deeply significant connection.
Good grief. You mean they don't contradict each other? Explain, counsel, at once.
Juror number 2, do you think, perhaps, that this could be one such novel alternative? Oh my, whatever you do mean. An alternative explanation as to how the victim was stabbed in the back.
What are you talking about?
We've demonstrated that the fourth book, The Lion's Pride, that was found at the scene of the crime, originated in Mr. Garadeb's room on the top floor of his house. Therefore, it's equally possible that some other object besides the book could have found its way from the Garadeb household to the street below.
What's this now?
After all, Mrs. Garadeb could have thrown any number of different objects at her husband. Isn't that right, juror number 4?
What are you insinuating now, you little beanpole?
I'm beginning to think that ever since the true origins of this book came to light, perhaps she's had a feeling this might be what happened.
Now you listen here, you Eastern Gala. As the foreman of this jury, I demand a straight answer. Answer. Right. You give us this yarn about some other object making its way out of the house, but what? What was it?
Do I present that? I'm really taking a big gamble here. It was a bold accusation to make, but I haven't any real evidence to back it up. But I'm certain that at the very least this warrants further investigation. All right, Mr. Foreman, I'll try to explain the defense's theory. The other object that found its way from the Garadeb household to the scene of the crime was... Had to have been this, yeah.
Take that!
It always makes me really nervous when the music doesn't stop. Okay, it just hit. Juror number 4, Mrs. Garadeb.
What now?
I must apologize in advance for this, but I need you to confirm something else for the court. This knife. Have you ever seen this knife before?
Good Lord, Counsel, what on earth are you doing? That's the weapon that was lodged into the victim's back, man.
My lord, remember that when the victim was attacked, Mr. and Mrs. Garadeb were in the throes of an argument. Mrs. Garadeb was hurling anything she could at her husband, who had been backed up against the window. A window that had been opened to clear the smoke, and through which a book sailed to land at the crime scene.
You can't seriously believe that. The book was found in the victim's grasp.
Are you saying that it flew out of the window and across the street to land neatly in her hand?
Even my missus hadn't got a name like that.
Yes, I admit, there are many details we don't yet understand, but that's the point. That's precisely why we must not allow this trial to end. Not right now. Oh my. Mrs. Garadeb, your answer, please. Have you seen this knife before or not? I was actually expecting she was going to deny it.
And we'd have to have something else come in. My lord.
Oh, sorry.
I wish to change my decision.
I'm a woman of my word, after all. Thank you, madam.
Yes, I agree. I certainly didn't see this coming, but I just don't think it'd be right for this trial to come to an end now with so many unanswered questions.
Mr. Foreman.
I'd have to agree. Not that I think the granny did it, mind.
Yes, you know what? I'm not quite happy about this at the moment either.
All together now, ladies and gents.
What? I didn't get that last one.
We did it. Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo.
So, as a result of the defense's summation examination, a number of jurors' leanings have changed. 2 jurors call guilty, against 4 now calling innocence. Accordingly, the opinion of this court is divided. This trial will continue.
I feel like, though, at this point, perhaps one of the jurors should be recused? Maybe just a little bit?
Now then, Lord Van Zeeks, how does the prosecution wish to proceed?
I think we're going to find out next time. See you then.